certain behavior of children, many experts will tell us that it's direct correlation to the parents' behavior. So it's kind of pattern between the parents' behavior and the children. But we understand that there is a direct correlation when it's come to regular behavior issues. But how about behind closed doors, interaction between parents, is that has an effect on the future generation, and how? It's part of our discussion. Times allow, we'll talk a little bit Kabbalah, the mysticism, the relationship between the transmigration of souls and the effects on the future generation. We are on Tractate Nedarim, page 20 at the Mishnah. Nadar becherem, if someone makes a commitment by saying dedication. Now here we're talking about language and language expressions that a person said that he was totally misconstrued. Ve'amar lo nadarti ele bechermo shel yam. He said, you know, I meant something else, which is, there is a fishing net, for example, in Hebrew, you can call it also cherem. So I meant to say, the one said, not cherem, which is dedication, but I meant fishing net. Or another option, bekorban, which is I accept upon myself as an offering. Ve'amar lo nadarti ele bekorbanot shel melachim, which is a special gift that they bring before the kings. They call it tikrovta. And that's what I meant. Harei atzmi korban, which is he talked about himself. He prohibited his body upon someone driving a joy from it. ואמר לו, הודעתי לה בעצם שהנחתי להיות נודר בו. It means that I applies to some other bond that is there. Or another option, קורבן אשתי נהנית לי, which means that the wife, my wife, deriving benefit from me. And then, ואמר, לא נדרתי לה בשתי ראשונות שגירשתי. You know what I meant? I didn't mean my wife, I meant my ex. So, על כולם הנשאלים. So all these situations, usually when you make a vow, you need to go before the sage, erudite sage, and need to find a way to let you out. But here we don't. You trust the person that explained to us exactly what they meant. Ve'im nishalu, if those people who are uneducated people, so you cannot trust their interpretation, so they need to have a annulment from a sage. עונשים אותם ומחמירים עליהם. You call upon them, you ask them a question, you give them a fine or punishment, which is, there are a few ways to annul vows. One is called charata, which means the person is to regret over things that he said. And then you have a petach, which means you find a way. You said, if you know that this is what's going to happen, if, so did you ever make that commitment? That's a different avenue. So here you allow petach, but not charata. דברי רבי מאיר חכמים אומרים, פותחים לה פתח במקום אחר, מלמדים אותם כדי שלא ינהגו כראש בנדרים. So he said, no, you don't punish, you're just opening from elsewhere a basis to find some type of annulment for this matter of vow, and then you have to teach them that they should not take this kind of vow in the future in order for them to conduct themselves in the proper way and not take the matter of Nedarim lightly. So the Ridvaz asked a question. Someone said to his wife, you are prohibited to me like Shimshon and Delilah, and he expresses this Samson vow. And then they saw that he in violation, so he explained that I didn't say Shimshon with Nun, I said Shimshon with Mem. So he dealt with that question. Can a person on purpose twisted his language and get away with that? You read sometimes a response from the rabbis that lived through the Shoah, to the Holocaust, World War II. So for example, you read, it's a book called Torat Chaim. So that rabbi dealt with the question that the evil Nazis used to see a Jew in the street, and they're not Jew. If he's Jewish or not Jewish, doesn't look Jewish. So they said to the person in German, "Are you Jew?" So in one hand, a person doesn't want to lie. On the other hand, he doesn't want to be, who knows, to be harmed. So they ask if they can say Juden in a language that you basically, you meant something else. So he said, yes, you allow it. He allows. Even we are not allowed to lie, but here, you know, you do not have to answer straight because you know that they may harm you. So you see here, sometimes you have a need to twist the language to say something purposely ambiguous, very to have obfuscation, to make it in such a way that it's not clear for purpose, even for good purpose. And there are some ways that by force of circumstance people need to use this language. So the Gemara asks a question, הגוף הקשה, אם אין נשאלים דבר תנא, אם נשאלו עונשים אותם, מחמירים עליהם. So in one hand you said no, in the other hand you said you punishment, put punishment upon them and hold them strictly. אמר רב יהודה אחי קטני, וכולן הנצחים שלה, באמת דברים אומרים תמיד חכם. That apply to a scholar, that you can trust him, that he know how to properly express his vow. אבל בעם הארץ שבא להישאל, however, if it's come to someone who are not educated, that come and ask a question, that's a different story. עונשין אותו מחמירים עליו. So you impose upon him punishment and you go treat him strictly. בישלמה מחמירים לא פתחים אלא בחרטה. Okay, that we said that you don't go by the way that a person regret what he did. You have to have a total petach, total opening. That's the Ran said. אלא עונשין החדמי. Tell me how you punish him. כי דתניא, הוא לא נברייתא, מי שנזר ועבר לנזירותו. Someone committed himself to be a nazir, regardless if it was intentional or unwittingly. Either the Rambam said that he knows or he doesn't really realize that he have חלות נזירות. אין נזקקים לו עד שינהוג בו איסור, קיימים שנהג בהם היתר. So until he observed this type of prohibition, the same number of days that he observed in the prohibition, that something permitted to him, so that's basically a fine that the sages impose upon him as a result of his belittle or disregarding those days of נזירות. דברי רבי יהודה אמר רבי יוסי, מה דברים אומרים בנזירות מועטת? This apply that a regular short נזירות, which is 30 days period, because that's the shortest possible. When a person did not specify that he's Nazir, that's 30 days. אבל בנזירות מרובה, anything that exceeded more than 30 days and דיו 30 יום. So that's, go by the 30 days. אמר רבי יוסף אולו ואמר רבן הנזקקים לו, בדין דמזדקקי לא אבית שפיר. So if you have the bed din, that does not become involved with one that violated the Neder, so it has not acted in the proper way that they should. But the Ritva said that anyway that annulment is effective, so they should admonish the person, admonish the Bet Din, sorry, and the idea is that you do not put a ban, the Rosh said, against him, but אמר רבא חבר יעקב משמתינן לי. רבא חבר יעקב said, no, you excommunicate a court that annul את הנדר, and the Ran elaborate on that. Let me show with you just a vignette of the Ran. The Ran mentioned here, ולעניין לך כלמן כרבנן דמתניתין, דאמר נדרים הללו אין עונשין אותנו פתחל בנהו בחרטה. And then he elaborate and he ended by saying, וכתבו בתוספות חכמי הצרפתים זצ"ל. So it was the תוספות of the French rabbis. מעשה באחד שנדר מכל פירות שבעולם, someone committed himself not to take a vow from any produce in the world, חוץ מדגן, excluding the manner of grain, which is the foundation of bread, right? ועבר נדרו בא להישאל, he realized that he cannot survive without bread, so he came and he asked the rabbis, ונזכח לו לאתר והתירו לו, ולא נזכו לו גיסור. So in short, what he tried to say is, look, when it's come to bread, that's a foundation of food. So the rabbis can do retroactive, עקרו למפרע, in order that he will not continue the violation of the neder. והחכמים אומרים פותחים לו פתח. The sages said that we find some way to open the door for him, some opening, in order that people not be light-headed when it's come to vow. תנא לעולם אל תהי רגיל בנדרים. That's so important. The person should be careful not to be accustomed to make neder. שסופך למעול בשבועות, that eventually it starts with neder, and you can go from the vow to an oath, which is much serious, and we take it much seriously. The Pirkei Avot said in chapter 3, נדרים סייג לפרישות. So in one hand, if a person sees that he cannot control his evil inclinations, so he put the boundaries. But in general, a person should be careful not to make those type of vows. ואל תהי רגיל אצל עם הארץ. Be careful when you go to someone who's kind of, how do you say it, not religious or not educated, a person that life in vanity, right? שסופך להאכילך תבלים. And guess what's happened? He's going to feed you with food that is a problematic, right? Like tevel. If you remember the Midrash we studied in Aseret HaDibrot, in the Ten Commandments, they said, כי לא ינקה השם את אשר יישא את שמו לשווא. That God will not forgive someone who pronounced his name in vain. And the Midrash said that the whole world would tremble when this word of Moshe Rabbeinu came, when it was expression of the Ten Commandments. So here you have this matter of oath that the person takes, and it's involved indirectly the name of God with that oath. So you start with neder, you continue with oath. So be careful with all of that. The Torah Chesed was the late Vizhnitzer Rebbe. So he have one of the Hasidim, one of the followers, come and ask him if he can go for a week. He wants to go for next weekend to place so and so. Now the Rebbe said, why should I give you a blessings? You're not going there. So the follower, the Chassid, didn't understand what he meant. Sure enough, the guy traveled and things, they have all kind of trouble, and he came back. So he went to the Rebbe and he said, you know, if I knew I'm not going there, so if you tell me I'll sit and study, I do other things. The Rebbe said, no, it's not that I'm a prophet, and it's not I know what's happening in the future. You just didn't say Be'ezra Hashem. You didn't say with the help of Hashem, I'm going there. You just said, I'm going there. So I understand, since you don't incorporate Hashem in your words, the Torah said, Vayidar Yaakov Neder Lemor, that Jacob make a vow saying, Im yeh Elokim imadi, if God will be with me. So if you keep saying everything give me Hashem with God's help, that's different. If you don't use that term, so you don't incorporate Hashem in every aspect in your life, then it's a different story. אל תהי רגיל אצל כהן עם הארץ, שסופך להאכילך תרומה, and some say תרומה טמאה. So the idea is, when it's come to people who are uneducated or people who take things in vain, it can lead to others. ואל תרבה שיחה עם האישה סופך לבוא לידי ניאוף. That the idea that when you need to talk, you have to be careful because it can lead to adultery. When it's involved with over-exceeded conversation with women. רבי יחא ברבי יושע אומר, כל הצופה בנשים סופו בא לידי עברה. He said that someone who and the rabbis explain that deeply in a certain way, look at women, the end is enter to a scene. וכל המסתכל בעקבה של אישה, אהב לו בנים שאינם מעוגנים. Here the rabbi said it is a strong correlation between children that not behave properly, indecent children, and a person's certain behavior. That if he focus too much on this, it will have a result on his children. Was a great rabbi in America in the past generation, Rabbi Dr. Weisblum, very famous. Lakewood, etc., yeshiva. So the story goes that he's said by a very wealthy person. And that person said, look, I have all my wealth, but unfortunately my sons far away from the path of Torah and mitzvot. So he complained to the Rav and he said, look what happened to my children. So the Rav said to him, do you want me to give you a straight answer for this? He said, yes. He said, let me tell you a story. In the old days of Germany, when our grandparents lived there, they put every so often different restrictions against us. But one time they saw that we have a cemetery outside of the city's domain, so it was always a guard in a city. So they give us a special permission to bury our dead without a special license, without certificate, to carry the coffin or the body, right, to that cemetery without getting each time a pass. So people go, bury, and comes back. So some people realize that it's a good way to circumvent paying a high taxes to Germans. So what do? Several times they pretend that they have a dead, and actually they put gold, silver, all kind of money in the big coffin, and they passed the borderline, the guard, right? And they pretend that they have a funeral, and actually they escape taxes by passing to the guards, the guards at the borderlines. So one time the German guard was sitting in the guard, and he noticed that people go in a funeral, but no one is crying. So he said something is not right. So he stopped them and he says, what's going on? Who is the dead? What is the name of the person? And sure enough, he opened the coffin and it was full of money, silver, gold, and things like that. And people start really crying and said, forgive us, let it go. We'll never do it again, etc., etc. So the guard said to them, now you're crying. If you're crying early on time, if I see all of you crying when you carry that coffin, and I think it's a funeral, real funeral, that's different. But I noticed that you didn't cry on time. Now it's too late to cry. So Rabbi Weisblum said to him, look, if you listen to the Gedolei Israel, to the rabbis, the way that you should teach your children and the way that you should behave, and the children will see that that's the manner you behave at home and they follow, then things will turn in a certain way. But now you're crying when they already grew up and already independent. What do you expect? So it's a message. There are many times that I can express what I hear from many people, that if at home they only talk about money, and the only thing the children hear all the times is money issues and how, etc., etc., and that's the core discussion or problems at home. So children understand that that's the most important thing in life. It all depends how the parents convey the indirect message to the children, because the children have this antennae. This is always they're watching what's really, and if they see that the parents focus on the Torah and mitzvot, then you have a proper result. You see even a simple people that have a gorgeous, beautiful children, and it's a reason. They follow, they see how the parents behave, what is really important for the parents. I asked the other day someone, I don't want to mention name, we see him every single day here at the minyan. And the man is not from really frum or any religious family by any means. So one time I asked him, just curious, he said, my father was not religious, but every morning he never missed a minyan. Every morning, all my years. So one thing he learned from his father to come to the minyan every day, no matter what. Anyway, Amar Rav Yosef ubi ishto nida. So it means that this is the period of time that the person prohibited by Torah law to have sexual relation, so he should be careful not to look too deep, because that can lead him to a lust and desire, and then it will lead him to cohabitate with her in inappropriate time. אמר רבי שמעון בן לקיש, עקבה דקטנה במקום התינוק, כפי שהוא מכוון כנגד העקב. So here they speak in particular, it's a euphemism, but they mention the unclean area, which is the opposite of the heel. So the Tanya. So here we talk about the revelation of Sinai from the book of Shemot, chapter 20. ובעבור תהיה יראתו על פניכם. They said that it should be a awe on your faces. Awe meaning the reverence of Hashem on your faces. זו בושה, which is this a reference to the characteristics of some type of embarrassment or shame. לבלתי תחטאו, that you should not sin, because that shame leads to what? שהבושה מביאה לידי יראת חטא, leads to fear of sin. So the Shla HaKadosh said, you know, you see a face of a person is a reflection of what's happened to his heart. So the rabbi said that, what does that mean? Ezer kenegdo, when God created Eve, it's a help corresponding, that's basically save a person from a sin. מכאן אמרו, סימן יפה באדם שהוא ביישן. אחרים אומרים, כל אדם המתבייש לו במראה הוא חוטא. ומי שאין לו בוש בני, בידוע שלא עמדו אבותיו על הר סיני. So, the Satmar Rebbe used to say, Mishnah tells us, Yehuda ben Teima Omer, it's a Mishnah in Pirkei Ovet, right? Hevei az kanamer, ratz katzvi, Gibor Ka'ari, you should be like a lion to serve Hashem. And then the Mishnah ended, Shivane Beit HaMikdash b'mera b'yameinu. So what's the connection between the building of the future temple and all this matter of behavior? So he explained that every midah, every trait has to be the proper measure. Azut, a person should have this type of guts or strong personality, has to be for the purpose of kedusha, purpose of sanctity and serving God with holiness. But if a person uses it inappropriately, it can be geinom. So the idea is a person should always have the right balance in every trait that persons have to utilize it properly. And soon you have the Beit HaMikdash, then we granted with the gift of understanding, so we no longer need to think if we are in balance or not. Omer Rabbi Yochanan ben Da'avai, ארבעה דברים סחו לי מלאכי השרת. There are four different things I heard from the ministering angels. And bless you, there's a few explanation what does that mean, ministering angels. Soon you see it's applied to a pious, righteous people. But in a literal sense, it's the ministering angels. And they said, this is frightening. חיגרים מפני מערביין, מפני שהופכים את שולחנם. Why you see children that were born lame with this defect? Because the parents have the sexual relation in an inappropriate way, like in animals, like all kind of ilmi mipnei ma'avyan. Why the children were born mute, God forbid? מפני שמנשקים על אותו מקום, because they kiss in that place. חרשים מפני מעווין. Why the children were both mute and deaf, God forbid? מפני שמספרים בשעת השמיש, because they converse at the time of cohabitation. סומים מפני מעווין. Why the children were born blind? מפני שמסתכלים באותו מקום, because they gaze at that place. So the rabbis elaborate on that. The idea is, especially you see it in the secret part of Kabbalah. There is several books. Reb Chaim Vital was a student of the Arizal. He said that there is a concept of Gilgulim, or transmigration of souls. So in short, what he tried to say is that each soul has a designated job that the soul needs to do in this world. But if the soul was transmitted toward improper cohabitation, that imposed upon the soul to clean things above her mission before the soul are able to fulfill that mission. So in a simple way is, if the soul designated to do certain excuse me, task, and the parents, while they cohabitated, did it in inappropriate way, the soul have these klipot, these layers that needs to be clean before the soul reached the mission that was designated originally. So therefore, it's in a way imposing upon the children suffering. There's a story about the student of the Chafetz Chaim. You see a fellow that was overwhelmingly life of Job, which is physically incapacitated, everything. So and they saw him happy. So one time someone asked him, why are you always happy? So he said, when I was a young man, I went to the Chafetz Chaim. And when he saw me, he gave me a mashal. He gave me he told me a story. He said it was a man that was a very pious man, but he came before the heavenly tribunal, and they said, look, you are rich, and you have this manner of arrogancy, you behave in a condescending way. So therefore you cannot go to paradise. You have to go back. So he said, look, if I need to go back, I want to go back poor person. I don't want to be rich. So they said, fine. But then he said, I'm afraid that even I'll be poor, I'll behave in arrogance way. So I would like to be, to have some disabilities. He said, fine. He said, even I have disability, I'm afraid that I will still be in violation of what I'm supposed to fix. So I would like to be without hand, without leg, etc., etc. So he begged, so in heaven they granted him. So when he reached this point that he is in this world, he was born with all these deficiencies. So he basically now understands that he was granted a gift to repair mistake in the past by being born in a certain situation and have a certain lives. So the reason that the person's happy is because he understands that Hakol Tovah, that it's all for good, is repairing mistakes that was happened in the past. So the message the Chafetz Chaim tried to tell me, that all these things that happened to me, I should look at it in a positive way, that it's a reason to repair, to have tikkun, all kind of mistakes that made in the past. Yes, you want to?
How can we know what is our purpose in this life?
So the answer, it's a good question. The answer is, the first purpose is to serve Hashem and to follow the path of Torah and mitzvot. That's the goal of life. But since we mentioned Kabbalah, so the idea is that since we are here, I meant in the language of Kabbalah is to repay mistakes in the past, so we have to act in an extra piety to make sure that when our time comes, which we never know when, we'll be able to stand before Hashem and said, we conduct our life and we repair the mistakes that we made in the past.
But all you want to know your mistake in the past, all you want to do tikkun if you don't really know you.
The rabbi, it's a good question. The rabbi tells us, I'm just giving you a vignette of Kabbalah. The rabbi tells us each and every person has an area that he or she are weak. One person is weak with alcohol, another person is weak with drugs, another person is weak with women, another person is weak with money, right? So the moment you see that there is a pattern, that you are constantly weak in certain areas, it's, the rabbi said, the rekanati, some of the rabbis in Kabbalah said that that's a signal from heaven that this is an extra area you need to repair and it's connected to your past. Anyway, ורמינו שאלו את אמא שלום, the wife of Rabbi Eliezer, that was her name, that's an honorable name. מפני מה? For what's the reason? 20b, בנייך יפהפין ביותך. You look at your children and they are so gorgeous, beautiful. So she said, Ba'ali, meaning when it's come to my relation with my husband, אינו מספר עמי לא בתחילת הלילה ולא בסוף הלילה. My husband doesn't have a conversation the beginning or the end of the night. The rabbi said that either it's because he sees other women during the day and his mind is there, or the end, but אלא בחצות הלילה, only at the time that everyone is total at asleep, middle of the night, וכשהוא מספר, מגלה טפח ומכסה טפח. And even to converse, it's not while he was or we are total naked. ודומה עליו כמי שכפאו שד, and he behaved in a manner that it's like some demons is after him, which means that it's not total for the purpose of joy. ואמרתי לו מתם, ואמר לי כדי שלא ייתן עיניי באישה אחרת. They ask why you behave like that is because I don't want to think about other women, ונמצאו בניו באים לידי ממזרות, because that's affected the children, that they enter to idea of having illegitimate children by cohabitated with prohibited women. So the Gemara said, so he said that that's the reason why you have children who are deaf mute. So the kasha had mila de tashmish, had mila achrayniata. So you have to differentiate between things that relate to the cohabitation to others. You see sometimes just a simple person that have a beautiful children, and it's the rabbi said it's connected to that. How the parents' behavior affected their children. It's a story about the Lolover Rebbe, Reb David of Lelov. They said that they offer a shidduch, they offer someone matchmaking, but it was a sister that converted to other faith, and they ask a question: do we have a reason for that to break up the potential marriage? So he goes back and he said the reason that this child behave in this way, you have to go back to a certain parent's behavior. And he said that something the mother did that wasn't right, that affected, and that's what happened. But from that point to say that it's all bad, you can't say, but you derive from that the whole concept that when you have a misbehavior of parents has an effect on the children. אמר רבי יוחנן, זו דברי רבי יוחנן בן דאבי, אבל אמרו חכמים אין הלכה כיוחנן בן דאבי, אלא כל מה שאדם רוצה לעשות באשתו עושה. משל לבשר הבא מבית הטבח, רצה לאוכלו במלח אוכלו, צלי, רצה אוכלו מבושל אוכלו, שלוק אוכלו, וכן דג הבא מבית הצייד. So it means, this is euphemism. The idea is that a person can do the way that he wished to. Again, is a different view. You see among the Sephardic rabbis that they, again, is different views. If that's proper, it's proper, appropriate, not. Amar Meimar, Man Malchei Hasharet L'Rabanan. What we meant to say ministering angels, that apply to the sages. If you tell me that this is really heavenly angels, so So because they have the ability to formation of the fetus than any others, והמה יקראו למלכי השרת? דמצייני כמלכי השרת, because they are different than other people, because they behave, they knowledge, the pattern of life is like ministering angels. ההיא דעתה לקמי דרבי, אמרה לו רבי ערכתי לו שולחן והפכו. So she said that shulchan is table, but it's a euphemism. She meant to say that the relationship was in the opposite. אמר לביתי תורה היא תירתך ובאני מה אעשה לך. He said the Torah permitted you to him, and so what do you want me to do? So either it was against her will, others say that it was a different manner, but the Zohar HaKadosh, the Holy Zohar, tells us that the course of the Arichut HaGalut, the length of the exile, it's also based on this. Anyway, ההיא דעתה לקמי דרב. אמרה לו רבי ערכתי לו שולחן והפכו, אמר לה מה ישנה בינתה? What's the difference between this and any fish? So it means that he has the right. ולא תטורו אחרי לבבכם. We said it every day from the book of Bamidbar, chapter 15. Good morning, Dr. Friedman. You shall not, the Torah said you shall not follow your heart. מכאן אמר רבי על אשתי אדם בכוס זה ויתן לה בכוס אחר. Rabbi said that men should not drink from this cup while setting his eyes on another cup. So it means that the person should not while cohabiting with one woman, he may not think of another woman. אמר רבינו על נצרכה, אלא דאפילו שתי נשיו. רבינו said that even that it's not needed except to teach that this is even prohibited, even both of two women are his wife. So Ezekiel said in chapter 20, ובראתי מכם המורדים והפושעים בי. I will select from among you those who rebel and those who transgress against me. אומר רבי לוי said, אלו בני תשע מידות. This is 9 manner of misbehavior in the relationship. Now they give us an acronym, which is Bnei Osnat, Mashag Ach, Bnei Eima, Bnei Anusa, Bnei Snua. This is example. One is the children of fear. This that children of a forced woman, children of a hated woman, which means that the cohabitation happened in that manner. Bnei Nidui, when she was excommunicated. Bnei Tmura, that he thought about one and it was another. Strive. Bnei Shichrut, the children of drunkenness. Bnei Meriva, meaning that when they are in strife and fight, why drunk. Bnei Grushat Alev, that a person make a decision that he's going to divorce her, but he still cohabited with her, so the children that come out of that cohabitation will not be good. Bnei Irbuvya, that children of the mingling, which means that they several men cohabited with her and doesn't know who is the father of the child. Bnei Chatzufa, the children of brazen women. So there's few explanations what does that mean, but in general is the one that adamantly requested it. So it's called in the language of Talmud Chatzufa. So they said, Eini, ואמר רבי שמואל בר נחמני, אמר רבי יוחנן, כל איש אדם שאשתו טובעתו, אבל לא בנים שאפילו בדורו של משה רבנו לא היה כמותם, שנאמר אבוא לכם אנשים חכמים ובונים, וכתיב ויקח את ראשי שבטיכם ולא כתיב נבונים, וכתיב יששכר חמור גרם, וכתיב מבני יששכר יודעי בינה לעיתים. So in all of that it's example of children that born out of the wife that demand the relation, like Leah did it with Yaakov Avinu. So they said that type of petition indirectly by acting of Dimratza Artsuyei, So she basically acting in a pleasing way. So therefore, it's proper, but not that she demanded, entice her husband so that he understand that she want to engage in sexual relation with him. So then the children are good, versus when she's chatzufa, which means that is a blatant request, then it's a different result. So as you see here, it's we live in a Torat Chaim, which means the Torah is the Torah of life. We don't expect people to be an angels. By the same token, we're expecting people to understand that a certain pattern of behavior has an effect not only on them, but on the future generation as well. And therefore, a person should strive to serve Hashem in the proper way and understand that every single action we have has a future consequences. Hadran alach ve'elu mutarin.
Boyachem leshuloim malachai yeshuloim malachai